Hi guys, so welcome to Ancientsathon vlog part 2. I'm going to start this on a little bit of an awkward note because something just happened that I just need to celebrate, and I haven't started this vlog yet, so I'm just gonna start it now and just tell you that my watch later playlist is down to 33 videos, which for some of you is like, wow, that's still a lot of videos. But for me, it's been at like 80 for months now, and I've just been unable to get it down. And today, between today and yesterday, I have found ways to watch more than I usually do, and I have gotten it down 50 videos to where it was, and I just feel like that deserves a cheer. I'm sure once December comes around and Vlogmas, that's what it's called, Vlogmas comes around for everybody, it's gonna be crazy again, but hopefully until then I can keep it to a manageable number. I guess I'll quickly talk about what I read today, so I don't want to grab them right now, but I did read my portions of The History of the Kings of Britain and The Pilgrim's Progress, both still really good. I don't have much to say about them. I didn't read very much today because I was editing, my first part 1 vlog, and it was so long, and it was probably the longest video I've ever had to edit. So yeah, that happened and it took me forever. And then I also did my mid-year check-in video, which also, though not quite as long, was still pretty long. So it took a lot of time, and so basically, this was my day. Let's run through it. I started off at work, my job with my dad at his doctor's office. Worked there from 8 in the morning until I think I finished about 11. Got back by about 11, so it was like 3 hours, not much. Then, as soon as I got back, I decided to start my training for my other job, my new job. And that training was 4.5 hours long, plus like here and there I'd take little breaks and stuff. So I ended up finishing a little after 4:30, and then not long after that, I took a little break to kind of, decompress. Then pretty much right after that, I ended up starting editing my videos, and that took me between that and then I had dinner and I took out the trash. That was like 2 seconds of my life, but I took out the trash and fed my roommate's turtle, and all that took until about 9 o'clock, and then I just read finally my portions of those 2 books, and that took me till about 9:40, and then I cleaned up stuff and watched some more YouTube videos, got myself down to 33, and now I'm on here, and I don't even know what time it is because I don't have my watch on. 1 second. Okay, it's 11:40. I don't really know where the past 2 hours went. What did I do to have that much time pass? Maybe I started reading later than I thought I did. I'm very confused. I guess I did watch Jennifer Brooks's video, which was like 20 minutes, and then I watched a couple other little videos, so I guess it kind of makes sense, but I feel like the time just disappeared. I don't know. Anyway, that was my day. Not much to share. Sorry, this clip was probably way longer than it needed to be based on the fact I had nothing to say. But, I will check in with you when I do have more to say. Hey guys, so it is the next day, the 11th, and I wanted to let you know I did finish Coriolanus. I read the whole thing, listened to / read it. I read along with it. And I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. It was really interesting. I wasn't sure going in, and I actually, even by the end, was kind of considering giving it a 3 stars for full transparency. But the more I think about it, the more I really like it. I felt like the female characters, especially Coriolanus's mother, who plays a pretty strong role in the story, was very interesting and very different from a lot of the other women I've seen in Shakespeare's plays, so that was very interesting. I felt like Coriolanus himself was a very interesting character where he was very flawed, and I wouldn't say I really liked him, but his ending was very tragic, and so you feel, at least I did, I felt a little bit of sympathy for him, but at the same time, he is a very arrogant person and very unsympathetic to the trials of his people, and that's what gets him into a lot of trouble. So I felt like it was just very different from a lot of other Shakespeare plays I've read. I don't know, I mean, I haven't read that many relative to how many he wrote, so there could be others that are similar to this, but I did feel like it felt very different. It was very political, and it was also very plot driven, more so than I think some of other Shakespeare plays are. And yeah, I ended up enjoying it, and again, the more I think about it, the more I feel like a 4-star is a really good rating for it, because I enjoyed it overall. I could see why other people wouldn't like it as much. I don't feel like there's as much good writing in it. There's not as many good like speeches as in some of his other plays, which I think is probably why it's lesser well known, because there's not these grandiose soliloquies or anything like that that will work with a lot of what people expect from Shakespeare. So I think that's probably why. It also doesn't have, I mean, it has interesting characters, but I don't feel like the characters are as developed as they are in some of Shakespeare's other plays, and that may also partly be because there's not as many like big speeches or soliloquies or things like that that really stood out to me, at least. But like I said, I found it very interesting, and I'm glad I read it. It also, I'm going to have to continue to consider how it connects to the Hunger Games and Coriolanus Snow, because I can kind of see how it does. But I also feel like it just was a little interesting that Coriolanus as a character, you can sympathize with him a little bit, even though he's kind of an awful person. And so I feel like that's interesting, an interesting dynamic to have with the character that is the namesake of this awful, horrible character, President Snow, in the Hunger Games. So anyway, I'll definitely continue to think about that. It was very interesting for sure. Honestly, it might just be the Roman connection that is the biggest reason why Suzanne Collins named him that. But anyway, I did also read my portion of Pilgrim's Progress, History of the Kings of Britain, both still going well, not much to say about them. Right now I'm actually going to go to my parents' house for my work training. I think I mentioned in my last vlog, but I've been trying to do my live training over Zoom over there, just because there I have a door and here I do not, and I wanted a little bit more privacy while doing my trainings. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Also, my sister's been in Florida and she's coming home tonight, so I'll be able to see her pretty quickly this way by being over there. And yeah, that's all I have to say right now. I will update you later. So I usually only try to update maybe once a day, but it's actually the same day, and the reason why I'm coming on here is because I ended up getting some book mail, which you get some bad lighting because it's nighttime. This actually was sent to my parents' house, and it was supposed to come tomorrow, so I was a little surprised it was there today. But I'm going to open it up and show you what I got, because yes, like the last vlog, I got more books. Also, I just barely ended up ordering a couple other books because there's one book I realized I actually need, well, I don't need it, but I would like to have for Jane Austen July that I have read, but I'm going to be finishing off my last Jane Austen full-length novel, so I'm going to do a ranking video. And there's one book that I've read that I haven't purchased yet, and I kind of want to be able to hold all of them up in that video when I get to it. So I was like, you know what? Let's snag that really quick. So I ended up buying another book. But you know, it's fine. It's been a couple months since I had a good book buying binge. So, I mean, a couple months, it's probably been like a month. But, you know, at least I spread it out a little bit. Plus, I just got that massive stimulus check, which I need a lot of, like I mentioned in my last vlog, for school. But not all of it. I still have a couple $100s of it that I can kind of use for other things. And apparently, well, okay, I bought books and I bought a few other necessary items as well. So it's not like I'm spending it all on books. I just spent like, I don't even want to think how much of it. Like $60 out of $400 on books. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Okay, so I ended up grabbing 3 books. So the first one I got is Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. This is a retelling of Jane Eyre from the perspective of a character I'm not going to mention because spoilers, but I am very excited to read this. It's not very long at all, very short, and it's one I've wanted for a very long time. All 3 of these books I'm going to mention I've wanted for a very long time, so I feel extra okay about getting them because it's not like I just like spur of the moment bought random books. I got books that I've had on TBRs for a while. So we have this one. Then we have a book that I did not, that's a lot longer than I expected it to be. And I really don't know much about it, but it's a Victorian novel that I've heard decent things about, and this is a beautiful copy of it. So hopefully I will enjoy it. But the book is John Halifax Gentleman by Dinah Maria Mullock. And like I said, I really don't know anything about this book, but I have heard a couple people read it and enjoyed it, so I decided to pick it up, and it's really a beautiful, beautiful edition. Based on the synopsis, it looks like it's kind of similar, it seems, to Great Expectations. Not exactly the same, but John Halifax is an orphan who kind of is trying to rise in the ranks, basically, who apprentices himself to a something. Anyway, and he makes a marriage to a gentlewoman, and yeah, it sounds very interesting, and hopefully I'll end up enjoying it whenever I get to it. It's seriously a lot longer than I thought it would be. For some reason I imagined it to be a lot more petite, but it's like over 500 pages. It's like nearly 600 pages. It's a pretty decent sized book. So anyway, there's that. And last we have a book that I knew would be ginormous, so I was very much expecting it to be as big as it is, but it's one that I've wanted to read for a long time, and I actually am considering potentially at some point doing a special project, like read-along project with this, and that is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. I have never read this, never seen the movie, don't know much about it at all. All I know is that it is a retelling of Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray, and I haven't read that either. And so the project I was thinking about doing with this possibly next year is to read Vanity Fair and then read this all together with whoever wants to join in. I think that could be a lot of fun, but not completely sure if I will do that or if I'll just end up doing it on my own, but I do really want to read this at some point. I think I'm really gonna like it. So finally got a copy of it, and yeah, so those are the 3 books I ended up picking up. Like I said, I do have a couple more books coming. I don't know if I'll receive them by the time this vlog is over. I purchased them from Book Depository, which sometimes gets here relatively quickly, and so there is a chance I'll be able to open it on here, but I'm not for sure on that, so we'll just have to wait and see. But excited about those, and I am going to go take a shower now because I really desperately need one. Hi guys, so you get the same background that I feel like I have in most of my clips. Sorry about that, but this is my little reading corner. So anyway, before this you should have seen a few little tiny clips of a single ride from an amusement park I went to the other day with my siblings. Yeah, I meant to take a lot more clips, but I ended up only getting clips from the perspective of the train ride there where we got to see animals. So it kind of looked like I went to the zoo, but I went to an amusement park. And I'll probably go there again at some point, so maybe it will be in this vlog and I'll take better clips then. But anyway, quick update on life. I did just read The Pilgrim's Progress, and I kind of reached a point where it's starting to feel very essay-ish, I guess, where, I mean, there's still things happening, but it's slowed down a little bit. There's a lot more like back and forth dialogue that's written out in these long essay-like type quotes, if that makes sense, and it's gotten a little dry because of that. There was also a portion just barely that I read about ignorance, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really enjoy that part. I feel like there's a lot of points this story makes. Being a religious person myself, let's caveat that. Being a religious person myself, there's a lot of very interesting points made in this, but I also feel like there's several things I disagree with, which isn't a bad thing and doesn't make the book bad. But it does make it so there's certain parts that I just don't agree with, and I don't necessarily like the way the principles are presented. And so that's kind of happened with this ignorance scene, the scene with ignorance. I just didn't completely, I don't know, the two like good characters at this point in the story are very kind of self-righteous and kind of, they come across a little bit arrogant in their knowledge, which I find very interesting because what they're preaching is the idea that we are weak and we need God for everything, for all understanding, and yet they have this sense of like, but we know better. I think my biggest, as far as outside of like religious points of view and stuff, I think it's just gotten a little bit dry where I'm at. Just, yeah, a lot of kind of portions that feel like I'm reading an essay when I'm trying to read a story. So that's my one complaint right now, but again, still enjoying it. Also read The History of the Kings of Britain, my portion for the day, and we have reached the point where Uther Pendragon has officially been mentioned, so I'm very excited about that. He's only been mentioned though, so we haven't gotten like super deep into his story, let alone Arthur's story, but it is exciting to be getting to that portion of this book. As for other things in life, yesterday I watched Sense and Sensibility with Emma Thompson, and it was the first time I've ever watched it all the way through, and I absolutely loved it, like to the point where I just remembered how much I enjoyed reading the book. And for a long time I've thought Sense and Sensibility was like lower down on my Jane Austen ratings. Still really enjoyed it, but I kind of saw it as like, yeah, towards the bottom of this out of the 6. But watching that and then considering the book itself and my experience reading it, because I do vividly remember super enjoying the process of reading that book, I think it might actually be my second favorite Jane Austen after Emma. Like, I still love Pride and Prejudice, but I think there's just certain topics approached in Sense and Sensibility, that I really, really like, that really grab me. I will say I think Pride and Prejudice is a better written book. You can tell that Jane Austen was further along in her career. She was a lot more developed in her skills by the time she wrote Pride and Prejudice. So I get why that's a favorite, and I would say in a more objective sense, I'm not going to say completely objectively because I'm still a person, but in a more objective sense, I would say Pride and Prejudice probably is a better book overall as far as like writing talent and stuff and with character development. But I just think Sense and Sensibility has a story that really grabs me a lot more. I feel like I relate really well to Eleanor Dashwood, which I really appreciate, and I love comparing and contrasting Marianne to Eleanor, not in like a one's better than the other way, more just in a they have very different weaknesses and strengths, and I think it's interesting to see that in both of them. I also really like the male love interests in Sense and Sensibility. I mean, I like Mr. Darcy, but I've never been like that interested in him, and so I feel like Sense and Sensibility, Colonel Brandon and Edward Ferrars are two that I really enjoy, and I like Willoughby as well. Honestly, I think he's a very interesting character. In some ways, even more, I would say, than Mr. Wickham. I just feel like Mr. Wickham is a little bit more of a obviously not nice person, whereas Willoughby, I feel like, is a little bit more complex, and I appreciate that. You can totally argue with me on that if you have other thoughts. Yeah, I think Willoughby is a more interesting character than Wickham is, but they have like a similar role to play in the story. So anyway, we're gonna stop that ramble. I may ramble more about it in my Jane Austen ranking video that will come next month, but for now we're gonna stop there. Those are just some thoughts I've had with watching the adaptation and just considering my ranking of Jane Austen books in general, as I'll be doing that in a few weeks. But yeah, that's all I have to share right now. I am going to probably read The Sunne and Splendour for the rest of the night, which I'm really excited to do. I've wanted to just spend several hours just falling into that book, and I finally get the chance to tonight. Not sure if I'll update tomorrow unless I have something specific to say. I just feel like all my clips end up being so much longer than they all end up being like almost 10 minutes. I mean, I edit them down, but they all end up being pretty long. And when you're doing 2 weeks, so like 14 days basically worth of almost 10 minutes clips, that adds up to a lot of time that I have to edit down. So, I mean, luckily it's not usually quite that long, but anyway, yeah. So we're gonna stop here, and I will update you when I have something specific to say. Hi guys, so I am giving you an update. I don't remember when my last one was. This week has been like weird time-wise, so I keep thinking it's almost the end of the week. It's like right in the middle of the week. It's Wednesday. But anyway, I wanted to do a quick update. I did read my portions of Pilgrim's Progress and the History of the Kings of Britain. I did skim the History of the Kings of Britain a little bit because it was Merlin's prophecy. And for anyone who's read it, you know that it's just kind of a bunch of rambly things that make no sense. So I just kind of like skimmed through it. It was like, okay, cool. All this prophecy speech, fun. But we're getting closer and closer to Uther coming into the throne, and then probably Arthur after that. So I'm really excited about that. As far as Pilgrim's Progress goes, I have reached book 2, which I didn't totally realize that book 2 was basically like a sequel. It wasn't even just like another part. It's pretty much just a sequel that came out years later about the family of the main character in the first part. So that's really interesting, and I'm excited to see how that goes. As you can see, my hair is up. I don't usually put it up, but it is so hot in my apartment. I don't know what is wrong. I even turned down our air conditioning, but I am just burning up. I might turn it down a little bit more even because, oh my gosh, it's so hot. Actually, there is a drought going on in my state right now, and there's some wildfires that are going on. So you can imagine it's pretty hot outside, which probably isn't helping the inside, but man, it's ridiculously hot. So anyway, I'll probably turn down my air conditioning, but one thing I did want to update you on that I haven't really talked about much in this vlog because I haven't made it very far, but I have now, is The Sunne and Splendour by Sharon Penman. I am really, really enjoying this. It's so big. I feel like I've spent hours reading it already, and I'm like barely, not even at 200 pages, but I'm hoping to get pretty far tonight. But yeah, I'm really liking it. It actually takes place from the perspective of several characters within the Wars of the Roses. It kind of jumps around inside different people's heads, and so I found that very interesting because I thought it was just going to be all from Richard's perspective, but apparently it's not. If you don't know what this is about, if you missed me mentioning it, it's about Richard III and just his life, basically. And like I said, it's kind of jumping around perspectives a lot more than I expected, which I like. I just wasn't expecting it. But I'm really enjoying it a lot. I feel like the writing's really good, and I like the way the characters are being developed. Sharon Penman is definitely out to make Richard III look like a saint, which, you know, I mean, I personally see him in a more nuanced view. I see him more as just a person, not really totally evil or totally good, just somewhere in the middle. But when reading about Richard, I love him, so I'm okay with him being made to look like a saint, even though I don't see him that way. It also is not very kind to the Woodville family, which I feel like with the Woodvilles, I also have a feeling of like, they were just people just living their lives the best they could within the setting that they were living in. So anyway, so that does grate on me a little bit, but I also get it because, you know, they were power grabbers for sure. In a world of power grabbers, especially at this time, they were just doing what everybody else was doing, but they came from a much lower background, and got in people's way a lot more, so made them angry. But anyway, so yes, definitely loving that. I also am nearly done with Anna Karenina. I have about 100 pages left. I'm listening to it on audiobook, and I think I have like 3 hours left of the audiobook. So I'm really, really enjoying it. I've made it to part 7. And originally I thought it was just going to be a 4 stars. I don't think I'm going to bump it up to 5 stars, but I think it might be more like a 4.5, so more in the middle, like an upper 4-star range, whereas before I thought it would be kind of like lower to middle 4-star range, if that makes sense. So definitely has picked up a lot. I'm really enjoying it, which I'm glad of because I haven't really liked anything by Tolstoy in the past. I've read War and Peace, and I've read The Death of Ivan Ilyich. I don't know how to pronounce that, but anyway, I've read both of those and didn't really love either of them. I didn't hate them, but they were just fine. But Anna Karenina is the first one that I'm like really enjoying. There are things about it I don't love, which is why it's not quite a 5 stars, but I am liking it a lot, and I'm excited to finish it. And I may, if I finish it within the next week or so, I may actually be able to listen to A Study in Scarlet, which was going to be on my July TBR. If you've seen that already, I believe it would have gone up by now. But I was planning on listening to that on audiobook in July, but I may be able to get it at least started, I guess, by the end of June, which is really exciting, not what I was expecting. So anyway, I'm going to be reading this. I actually have up, let's see if I can make it show without turning the camera around, Simon Savage and Becca in the Books doing a reading sprint. They actually did it earlier today, but I didn't watch it live, and sometimes when I feel like I can't focus on a book very well, which is how I'm feeling right now, but I want to read, it helps to watch like people's reading sprints, because, you know, they spend some time talking and doing stuff, and I think it's just kind of fun to be able to have something going on that you can kind of be watching, but like still make sure you're getting a good amount of reading done, you know? So anyway, I'm gonna do that. I may make dinner in a little bit. It's about 6:30, but I haven't really been hungry because I went to a bridal shower earlier and had a lot to eat there. I mean, not a lot to eat, but I ate more during that time than I usually do at that time of day, and so I'm not like terribly hungry, but that could change in the next hour or so. So anyway, that's my update, and I will check in with you later. Hey guys, so it is Saturday. I believe it's the 19th, but I don't have work or anything today, so I'm just kind of letting myself have the day to read. Like, that's my main focus today. And I've so far read Pilgrim's Progress, and I'm working my way through History of the Kings of Britain right now. Doing well. Wanted to show off my treat that I got for myself. So there's this place nearby that is called Kolache Crave, and it's more of a breakfast type place, so I don't always get it because I'm not one to really order breakfast very often, but they're technically open till 3, so it's kind of like breakfast and lunch. But it's a place where my roommate has gotten some food from there, and I've tried it and really liked it. And today I just was in the mood for it, and I remembered to actually potentially order from there, so I decided to. And for those of you who don't know, because I didn't know what it was, kolache is kind of like a type of pastry. I think it's a type of pastry dough, but I ended up getting both a savory and a sweet, so let me show you what those are looking like. So I got a chocolate, and then this is like a pig in a blanket, but it's like Cajun flavor, so I'm excited to try both of these. They look fabulous and smell delicious as well. So yeah, we'll do that, and then I want to read the Sunne and Splendour. I really want to get a good chunk of that done today, but I'm fighting myself so hard to not pick up a Victorian classic, specifically a Hardy novel. But really, I'm just in such a Victorian classics mood right now, or Jane Austen, but I'm waiting for Jane Austen July, so I feel like if I'm gonna fill that in, I need to fill it in with something else. But Sunne and Splendour is so big, and I really want to finish it by the end of the month, so I'm very all over the place with it. I think I'll definitely start with Sunne and Splendour, but if I get to a point where I'm bored, maybe I'll like even just start a Hardy novel, even if I don't finish it. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But man, the temptation to just drop Sunne and Splendour for a bit and read Victorian novel is so strong. But the thing is, I'm really liking the Sunne and Splendour. It's not like I'm bored with it. I'm actually really liking it, which makes it even harder because then I'm like, well, maybe I can put a pause on it and just read a short Victorian novel really quick. But I don't want to stop Sunne and Splendour because I'm really liking it. So I'm very all over the place with what I want to read right now, but we'll figure it out. We'll see how the day goes. Hey guys, so it's later on the same day, and I have been able to read quite a bit of the Sunne and Splendour. I'm nearly halfway through. I think I've got about 60 pages, and then I'll be halfway through, which in a normal book would be like a decent chunk of reading, but in this, that's very, very little. So I definitely feel good about that. I hope I can finish this by the end of the month. It's just so big, and while I'm really loving it, and I definitely think it's going to be a favorite of the year, it just, you know, it's just very long, and it takes a lot of time, especially when I'm not a very fast reader. So I kind of have a little bit of anxiety about finishing it before Jane Austen July. But I mean, really, if even in the first like day or two of the month I still haven't finished it, I can give myself a couple of extra days because Persuasion is my main Jane Austen read, and I'll start that on, I think it's the 5th. Like the Monday of the first full week of July is when I'm planning to start Persuasion. So, like, as long as I finish this before that, we're good. I don't know. I think it's very possible to do it I'm just gonna have to read a lot, and I'm starting up more officially my new job. I've been training for the past couple of weeks, and starting Monday, I'm going to actually be starting my job working with kids with autism, which is exciting, but also a little bit stressful. And I feel like a lot of my free time, especially in the first few days of the week, I'm going to be, even when I have free time, I'm going to be really thinking a lot about my job. It's going to be hard to focus on anything. So we'll just have to see how it goes. I just hope I can get myself to kind of compartmentalize a little bit with this new job and not, push aside my anxieties and my stress, and then be able to do other things, and then go to work when it's time to go to work. I'm also a little stressed because we're trying to figure out scheduling stuff still, and I think in general I'm just going to be working 3 afternoons a week for this job. I still have my second job that I'll be doing the other days, but there is a possibility that temporarily I'm going to be working also a 4th day for this job, which means I have to work my other job on Saturdays, which means I won't have Saturdays off right now, which I'd prefer to have Saturdays off if possible. And so it's just kind of, scheduling right now is becoming a little stressful. The job is a little stressful because it's a bit out of my comfort zone. I'm excited for it, but it is definitely a change for me. So it's kind of a lot of stress. And then, like I said, this book is huge and I want to finish it by the end of the month, but I'm also going to be anxious. So it's a lot on my mind right now, basically. But all that being said, I am still really loving it. Like I said, I think this is going to be a favorite of the year. It's so good. The characters are so well developed. I would say it's pretty well researched, especially for the time it was written in. If you don't know, this came out in the 80s, so before Richard's body was found, or skeleton, I guess, at this point, before Richard's remains were found back in 2012, so about 30 years before that, where now we know things about, like, his health, where his health was at, and the fact that he actually had scoliosis pretty bad. And so there's things like that where, like, I know about that, and that's been something I've learned early on in my research on Richard because I'm learning about him after the fact. So reading this, part of me is like, but he was kind of deformed, and it would be interesting if Sharon K. Penman had wrote it more recently, if she would have included that fact, if she would have involved the fact that Richard had this deformity that probably caused him a lot of problems, especially in the battlefield, how that would have changed the story. But that being said, it's still really, really fascinating to read. Again, the character development is amazing. The plot development is great. Definitely not a book for everybody. It's a little more slow burn just because, it's just going through these scenes in these people's lives. And so it can feel a little bit boring if you don't know much about the Wars of the Roses or about these characters and don't already have an interest in them. I'm sure people have read this who knew nothing about it and still really liked it, but I do think it's helping me love it as much as I do because I already know a lot about it, and I already love Richard and find him very fascinating, and really a lot of the characters in the Wars of the Roses I find very fascinating. So reading this is just kind of, I don't know, there's a feeling of coming home to it, just in this feeling of familiarity, because I have learned about them and find a lot of fascination with them, and so it's going so well, just as well as I had hoped it would. So definitely really good. I'm stressed out because I just am, but it's still really good. Also, I did not pick up any Victorian literature today, even though I wanted to so bad. I actually considered possibly reading a short story by Jane Austen or something, because I wanted something like that, but I didn't. I held strong. However, now I am going to watch the Northanger Abbey adaptation with J.J. Fields. I have not seen it before, but it seems really good. I've heard good things about it, and I figured, you know what, I need a break from reading. It's like 10:30 and so I should probably go to bed in the next hour or so, but I'll probably just stay up until this movie's done and then go to bed. But yeah, things are going good. I also wrote a blog post for my aunt's online school about Jane Austen July. Ooh, let me adjust this. Anyway, but I feel like that really spurred on my desire to do something Jane Austen, which is why, sorry, I keep moving the camera around, but that's why I'm watching this. So hopefully it goes well. And yeah, I feel like I'm just rambling and repeating myself, but basically I'm very excited for Jane Austen July. Sunne and Splendour is going great. Stressed about my job. Also with Jane Austen July, I just messaged a friend of mine who actually writes Regency romances, and she does really well with them, actually. She writes them and self-publishes them through Amazon, and she's pretty popular as far as I can tell, and so she's actually a childhood friend of mine, and I asked her if she'd be willing to do like a little tea party chat with me for Jane Austen July, just chatting about Jane Austen and about my friend's books as well that she's written, so that should be really fun, so look forward to that. I'm sorry, I just feel like I have a bunch of things I want to say. Another thing I want to say, Pilgrim's Progress and History of the Kings of Britain, enjoying them. Kind of excited to finish them though, not going to lie. I should finish them in the next week, which will be really good. Again, I'm enjoying them, but I just am excited to read other types of books. I feel like medieval and, pre-1700s literature, I really, really like, for sure, but it's a type of literature that I can't read too much of at once, otherwise I burn out pretty easily. And I feel like that's the same with just about any type of literature, especially classic literature for me. But I feel like in particular, it kind of all starts to blend together a little bit if I read it all at once in quick succession for a long period of time. I have felt that way about Victorian literature before, but I love Victorian literature. Like, that's my favorite. For those of you who are new to my channel, I am hosting Ancientsathon because I do love that type of literature. But my favorite type of literature is Victorian literature. Like, that is peak for me. That's where I love to be. I do need breaks from it at times, but it's literally been like only a couple of weeks since I last read something Victorian, because I read Great Expectations and it went through the entire month of May, finished it at the end. So it was very recent that I read Victorian literature, but for some reason I feel so deprived of my Victorian literature all of a sudden. And so that happens very fast, and there's not really another type of literature that happens with besides Victorian literature. I definitely, again, I need breaks from Victorian literature, but they don't need to be very long. Like, I need like Victorian lit and then something else, and then Victorian lit and then something else. So kind of interesting. It's very interesting to me too, because in high school, let me back up. So on our live show at the beginning of this month, Jennifer asked me if I liked to read fantasy. And it was so funny to me because when I was in high school, that's literally all I'd read was fantasy. And for a long time, like up until just a couple years ago, I identified myself as a fantasy reader. Like, that was I read other things too. It wasn't solely fantasy, but it was mostly fantasy. And even now, I still identify myself as a fantasy reader. Like, when it comes to more contemporary written books, I read fantasy and historical fiction, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm willing to branch out, and I do sometimes, but that's like my main two genres as far as non-classics go. But when she asked me that, I did realize that, you know what, I don't talk about fantasy books very much on my channel, especially within the past year or so as my channel has grown so much more. I mean, it's still very small, but it's definitely grown a lot in the past year, and it's been in the past year that I've really started to indulge in classics so much more. So it was just kind of interesting to have her ask me that when for the majority of my life I've identified myself as a fantasy reader. So to have someone not realize that about me, who someone who's in my bookish community, not realize that about me, it's it was just kind of oddly eye-opening to my new status as a reader, which I'm totally fine with. It's totally fine. And this is definitely nothing, I'm sure most of you know, but it's nothing against Jennifer, obviously. It was just, she's the one that instigated this thought process for me of being wow, I really have changed a lot as a reader, to the point where people who know me for reading think of me in a different way than they would have if I had a booktube channel even 4 years ago. it's very interesting. But I do still love fantasy, if you are curious. I do really enjoy fantasy. I've just found recently there are things about fantasy. My love of fantasy has even changed a little bit. Like, I've been able to solidify a little bit more what I like in fantasy now that I'm older. And it's more, I like political maneuverings within fantasy. And then I like the sweet fairy tale like fantasies. Those are kind of my two sweet spots when it comes to fantasy. So like epic fantasy, and then basically like I want to say middle grade fantasy, but it's not just middle grade because I like some adult works that have more fairy tale elements. So like Naomi Novik's books, I really like those. But yeah, I just recently have kind of noticed that's where I've settled, whereas when I was a teenager, I was all about the angsty YA fantasy. So that's definitely changed a lot. But anyway, again, I'm rambling. This clip is literally 13 minutes long, and I don't usually do clips this long, so I apologize for that rambling, but I'm gonna go watch my movie now and then probably go to bed, and I'll probably update you in a few days. Hey guys, it's Tori, and I just want to give a quick update. I've been doing a lot of thinking. It's Monday the 21st, if you're curious. This isn't going to be a long update, but I just wanted to mention, so I can document it, make sure I document it. I have decided I think I'm going to put a hold on the Sunne and Splendour. I think through this week I'll continue to read it as I feel the desire to up until the end of the month, but I just have my plans for July and I really want to focus on them, and I thought potentially I could finish the Sunne and Splendour by the end of this month so that I could enjoy my July, but with starting my new job, I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed with everything I'm trying to do. And I feel like the Sunne and Splendour is definitely not helping. And reading, as we all know, reading is supposed to be fun. So I just don't want to overwhelm myself with books when books are supposed to be my relief, if that makes sense. So I will still read it here and there throughout this week up until the end of the month next week. But once the month ends, I'm just going to put a pause on it and probably finish it off in August. August, I don't have any reading plans. I have one buddy read and that's it. So I really will be very flexible, and I plan on keeping it that way for August. I don't plan on participating in readathons or anything in August because I've just had 3 months in a row where I've been participating in readathons, so I just need a break, I think, from readathons. Usually I would hate to like take a break for a whole month from a book, especially when I'm really liking it, which I am with the Sunne and Splendour. But I feel like because the thing with Sunne and Splendour is I know the history pretty well. I know generals about the story already. So as I'm reading, it's just kind of like going into bigger detail about things I already know about. And so it's a lot easier for me to remember where I'm at in the story. For example, I actually read the first 40 pages about a year ago, and I did not reread those 40 pages this time because I remembered very vividly what happened in those 40 pages, even though it was a year ago. I just feel like this is a book where it's easy for me to keep track of where I'm at. Once I come back into it, it will be easy to keep up with. Again, I will still be reading. You'll probably see me reading it throughout this vlog, but I'm just not going to put as much pressure on myself. I'm just going to in fact, this week I don't know how much I'm going to read. I'm still keeping up with Pilgrim's Progress and History of the Kings of Britain, but I'm really not going to be reading much outside of that because, yeah, I'm starting up my job more officially this week, and it's just causing me a lot of anxiety. Plus, I'm still technically doing some training things for this job, which means it's taking up a lot more hours this week than it usually will. Meaning I have less time to read, and even the time I do have to read, because this is taking up so much of my time, my anxiety causes me to struggle to focus too much on reading, so I'm more inclined to watch a movie or watch a TV show or watch booktube videos as opposed to sitting and reading because I don't have the focus right now. So yes, just wanted to mention that so I can force myself to actually do that, because I feel like if I just keep thinking about it, I'm going to like force myself to get through it and just torture myself. So if I just say, here, I'm making that decision, I'm not going to do it, then I'm more likely to keep to that and hopefully enjoy reading more than I would if I was forcing myself to get into it, if that makes sense. So anyway, there's that. I will update you. I think my next update will just be when I finish the History of the Kings of Britain, which should be in a couple of days. So I will see you then. Okay, hi guys. As you can see, I'm in my car. Hopefully this setup will work for the few minutes I'm going to be talking. So I did finish the History of the Kings of Britain today, and I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It's one that I felt like, it wasn't like groundbreaking, the writing wasn't like amazing, but it was an easy read, and I don't regret reading it at all. I definitely am glad I read it. I feel like, especially if you're curious about like King Arthur or King Lear. Oops, there was a bug that just ran into my windshield. But anyway, it's definitely one that if you're interested in either of those personages, I think it's worth the read just to get a little more background experience with them. But like I said, it wasn't like amazing or anything. Also, with this specific edition of it, I was getting a little irritated because all the notes, well, first of all, they put all the notes at the end of each of the books, which are kind of like chapters in it, I guess, rather than at the very end of the book as a whole, which made it kind of hard to like find where they were because you had to just kind of flick until you found the end of the book because it wasn't like marked. So it was a little bit annoying that way. It also, on all the notes, whoever did the notes just constantly was pointing out how wrong the history was, and in a way that was just kind of irritating because he just kept being like, it's amazing that these people were such idiots, basically was what he was sounding like. And it just was obnoxious because I'm like, look, most people reading this book probably already know this isn't real. And even if you want to say that, if you want to point out specific things that aren't accurate to history, you can do it in a much more like just general way. You don't have to be so like rude about it. I don't know. I don't want to say rude because I'm like, I mean, his points were valid, but it just got irritating when it felt repetitive that he kept pointing out how dumb Geoffrey of Monmouth was, basically, and how dumb everybody was for believing him. Like, they were living in a very different world from the world we live in now, and they knew a lot less than we do now. And again, you can point that out while still showing respect for these people who had an interest in their country's history and who, you know, they valued adventure, they valued mysticism and just things like that, and that's what this book shows. And I feel like you can focus on that and mention, you know, this isn't true, but it shows these values that these people had, or it showed the world they were living in and how limited their knowledge was, but you don't have to make it so repetitive and just kind of callous, I guess, if that makes sense, and irritating, essentially. So that wasn't really it wasn't part of the book, so I didn't take that into account in my rating necessarily, but it was something that bothered me about this edition. Again, the story was fun, entertaining, and very easy to read. I don't have much else to say about Pilgrim's Progress. I have a few more days to work on it before I'll finish it, which is exciting. But beyond Pilgrim's Progress and beyond Ancientsathon, I wanted to let you guys know I finally did give in to the call for some Victorian literature, or specifically just some 19th century literature, because I really am excited for Jane Austen July, but I don't want to start Persuasion because I'm buddy reading with Katya, but I feel like I just need something to hold me over. I feel like Sunne and Splendour, like I mentioned, I'm going to put a pause on that, and the thing with it is I'm loving it. Like, I want to make that very clear. I'm absolutely adoring that book. It's so good, but just because of where I'm at in my life right now, I just feel like less the content and more the size of the book is just stressing me out a little bit. Like, I feel like I'm loving the content a lot, but because it's so big, it's just adding a little extra stress to my life that's already kind of stressful right now with my new job, which I've mentioned a million times, and I apologize for that, but it's kind of, taking over my life and my brain right now. And so I just need something that I'm in the mood for, that's shorter, that feels a little more doable to get done. Like, I just need to be able to get some books done, and not just books that I've been working on all month, like with Ancientsathon. So I feel like this one's only like 250 pages. In fact, I think it's exactly 250 pages. And it's also, I have about a week and a half before I'll be starting Persuasion. So I feel like it's going to be very doable. It is a classic, obviously, so it will be a slower read for me, but I just need the comfort of Victorian literature right now. And basically, I'm feeling either Hardy, Jane Austen, or Elizabeth Gaskell. And for Jane Austen, I'm starting her in a couple weeks, so we're gonna wait on that one. With Elizabeth Gaskell, the only other book I have currently by her that I haven't read yet is North and South, and I'm planning on reading that in August. I will be buying more books from her soon, don't worry about it. So Hardy is my choice, and I do have this book that is pretty short, so it will be very doable. And yeah, I also wanted to mention actually on audiobook, I did finish Anna Karenina. Not going to share all my thoughts here because this is an Ancientsathon vlog, so I want to kind of limit my discussion, in-depth discussion on that, but really enjoyed it. Not a favorite, but definitely really liked it better than War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. Really better than anything I've read by Leo Tolstoy, so that was exciting. Again, not a favorite, but one I enjoyed, and you'll hear more on my thoughts in my wrap-up. I think probably later this week is when I'll put my wrap-up up. And then to replace Anna Karenina, I am actually starting to listen to A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, so getting my Victorian lit in right now. I literally have listened to 10 minutes of it, but it's good so far, and honestly I think I might be able to finish it by the end of the month, which is kind of exciting, so that will be hopefully another book under my belt by the end of the month. We'll see how it goes, but my new job, my commute is about 40 minutes both ways. So, and this audiobook on the speed I'm listening to it at is about 2.5 hours. So I definitely should be able to, on those commutes, finish it probably within a couple days. And then I may listen to The Sign of the Four, or maybe I'll choose something else, but just kind of see what I'm in the mood for. I feel like with this new job, I'll be able to make it through a lot more audiobooks, which is kind of fun. But anyway, I am going to end this vlog here, I think, because I finished History of the Kings of Britain. All I have left is Pilgrim's Progress, and you can watch our live at the end of the month for that. It's also getting very hot in here, so I just need to end this so I can turn my car back on and turn on the AC. But I just wanted to come on here, mention that. I'm actually going to be reading this in my car for a little bit with the air on. I just needed to, or maybe I'll just roll down the windows. I don't know, it's pretty hot. We'll see. I just needed to get out of my apartment. I was feeling very anxious, and I just needed to get outside. So I actually brought a blanket, so maybe I'll go sit on the grass outside and just kind of look around. I'm right next to a doTERRA little farm area. doTERRA farm, it's not really a farm, but like a garden. And so it's really pretty to look at, not great to read in, which is why I'm on the other side of the fence, but it's very pretty to look at while I'm reading, especially while reading Victorian literature. So anyway, we're gonna get to that. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know down below some of the books you've been reading for Ancientsathon, what you've thought of them, if you've read any of these, what you've thought of them. Also be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, if you would like to. I post regularly on my channel, so you definitely won't be deprived of wonderful videos from me. Anyway, but thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!